Hello everyone, welcome back to Mexico City, day 3 for us, qualifying day, lots to unpack. A little bit like Vanessa Williams back in the day, we're going to save the best to last and talk about qualifying towards the end. You look like that reference has gone over your head. She's in musical theatre at the moment, Alex, in The Devil Wears Prada.
Excellent, which is actually on just down the road from our office on Tottenham Court Road, actually. That's
the Dominion Theatre.
It came back to me. Okay, right, fair enough.
There you go.
No,
anyway,
but otherwise, yes, it did go.
There's a pop reference that didn't land. Anyway, so sorry, but there have been more developments in the driving guidelines story today, so we'll unpack a little bit of that. Basically, what's going to happen is the driving guidelines are going to be revised with input from the drivers, and that is likely to be implemented in Qatar.
Exactly, Codling. Yeah, found that out today. Story first reported on the BBC that this was going to happen, that the FAA is open to changing this following the very long drivers briefing last night. I then discussed with various sources in the paddock and found out that what they're doing based on all that feedback they got in that very long session that we discussed on last night's video. The stewards were there of the Mexico meeting, the FIA representatives, FOM representatives, all the team managers, all the drivers, Alex Verts, the GPDA, everybody was there. The GPDA had a subsequent meeting afterwards, and effectively they came to, from what I understand, and everyone we spoke to Andrea Stella tonight, people I've spoken to at the FIA, very keen to highlight that this is a collaborative thing. It wasn't like there's some big argument, big bust up, and this is being forced through or forced on the drivers or anything. No, it seems to be everybody's reasonably happy with what's going on there. And yes, from the Qatar round, basically those driving standards guidelines that we've been talking about all the time since Austin, going to be altered. What that main interpretation is, and sort of confirmed effectively by Andrea Stella tonight, is that it will effectively shut down, or it might not do that, actually, that's fair, we don't know that yet. It will assess and look at the sort of loophole that we're loosely terming it. Maybe that's more of a layman's term than what the drivers of the teams would say, but basically what Max Verstappen has been doing by racing to the apex, turning himself back into the attacker when he's being overtaken. And the drivers, from how I understand it, not united in terms of some of them, there's just different interpretations. Even within teams, I think the Ferrari example, Carlos Sainz, I understand, fairly close to Lando Norris's position, particularly on what happened in Austin. Charles Leclerc, he even said it outright on Thursday, or was it yesterday? At various points he said it, that what Max is doing is hard racing, but within the guidelines and within the rules. So it does highlight there quite illustratively that the drivers aren't totally united on this. However, I think they're absolutely fine with it being looked at. The GPDA will agree and sort of sign off to what will come in Qatar. But from my understanding, there's this sort of the feeling that these things evolve all the time, and they're happy to potentially see that come through. But Codders, what has been the sort of actual reaction from the people we've spoken to? I mentioned Andrea Stella several times. So what did you make of what the drivers and people in the paddock were saying about this development? We
were both there, weren't we? What was it Andrea said? He was very statesman-like. He said, we've always been respectful, collaborative and constructive with the FIA. Now's the time to take action for the good of the sport. That seems to be, like you say, some drivers have different positions over who's in the right and who's in the wrong, but most drivers we've spoken to today, apart from the ins and outs of qualifying, which I promise we will come back to in just a second, have been positive that this, the loophole of that's been opened up by this, whether the front axle is at the apex first or whatever, they're quite happy for that to be closed and for there to be some clarity. And clarity is the word that keeps coming up. At the moment, it's just all a little bit too vague. But as Yuki Tsunoda said on Thursday, I think, if you give drivers a manual with what's permitted and what's not permitted, then you may as well be going to that Poxy AI Championship in Abu Dhabi, where, of course, some sort of heuristic bike juggler can cycle through a rule book as it approaches the apex, whereas drivers diving towards an apex, braking from 160 miles an hour or whatever, are not going to have time to pull a book out of their pocket and go, hang on a minute, am I in the right here? Oh no, I'm not. I better say after you. So,
well, I disagree with Tsunoda there, because theoretically AI could learn that and do it to perfection. But I'm not that the AI thing is just it's nebulous. It's not really relevant at all. But a driver can always make mistakes, and they're not thinking about the rulebook in those critical racing seconds. But it's that all of this feeds into how they drive and how they act. We could see some brilliant racing. Like I said, I've said all the way through this, what Max Verstappen is doing is genius. There's no other way of looking at it. I view it as a professional foul. I'm not alone in that Autosport. I'm not alone in that in the paddock. But there's no denying it's brilliant. It's very clever, and he is obviously within the current guidelines as they stand. 2 more races to go, at least on that here in Mexico, and then on to Brazil. 3 actually. I keep forgetting about Las Vegas because obviously I've blurred it from my mind because I had such a terrible time there last year. But anyway, I digress massively.
Should we just dive in very quickly into qualifying? Big victims, Sergio Perez.
Who you spoke to, or
I did.
Around all the local journalists from Mexico, funnily enough, wanted to speak to Sergio Perez.
Yeah, a massive flood around the pen of everyone wanting to talk to the LATAM drivers, and once Checo had gone and Franco Colapinto had gone, all of a sudden it was like a ghost town. So great special song, by the way, number 1, their final number 1. Anyway, enough of this pop madness. So yeah, Sergio Perez, very much looking, the late P.G. Woodhouse would have described him as looking like a man who'd gone looking for the leak in life's gas pipe with a lighted candle. Braking terrible. He was also a little bit dischuffed with the technical package. He's not on the latest spec. So man wheels a gearbox or something past us. Piastri, P17, his first Q1 exit of the season, and he got pinged for track limits. He went off at turn 12, but it damaged the lap enough. I think he was about a second up on his previous lap, but he'd done enough damage to his lap that even if it hadn't been struck off, it wouldn't have been fast enough. So let's go Scooby-Doo style to the front of the grid.
Oh yeah, let's
Carlos Sainz on pole, and everyone kind of happy.
Yeah, let's end with the brilliance from Carlos Sainz, saying, put in, from his point of view, what felt like 2 identical laps. Almost perfect were his words for both of them in Q3, and just so happy with his laps in what is a very tricky challenge in Mexico. Was so quick on his pole position lap, it surprised Pirelli, who reckon the teams are just treating the tyres better, understanding what went on in 2023. When it comes to qualifying runs, race runs, everything going better. Charles Leclerc disappointed to not make it into the pole fight, basically explaining that his driving style, and we see this a lot at tracks like Monza, where Sainz is able to just go with the understeer that is required with things like this, when it's very low downforce. Basically Leclerc's style just a little bit too wild. That's why we had that big moment in the middle sector, in the sort of SC section here. Overheats the rear tyres, and effectively that's what cost Charles Leclerc today. So yeah, that's it. That's our wrap up from qualifying day in Mexico. Join us tomorrow, as Connor's obviously keen to head to the exit. Join us tomorrow for our reaction to the Mexican Grand Prix in 2024.
Perfs.